हेलो, सलाम, आदाब। आपका स्वागत है प्रोडक्ट्स ऑफ थॉट में। मेरा नाम है अमान। इस स्पेस में बोर्ड गेम और टेबल टॉप रोल प्लेइंग गेम वाले क्रिएटर्स और प्रोफेशनल से हम बातें करेंगे, इंटरव्यू करेंगे। हम इनफैक्ट गेम रिव्यूज़ भी करेंगे, एक्चुअल प्लेस भी करेंगे और ऑडियो ड्रामास भी। ये एपिसोड के लिए हमारे साथ जुड़े हैं जॉर्ज 3 सेल स्टूडियो से, जो कि फरवरी में अपने किक स्टार्टर के साथ आ रहे हैं अपने पहले TTRPG के लिए, जिसका नाम है मैपा मंडी। अब मैपा मंडी क्या है? ये एक इकोलॉजिकल रोल प्लेइंग गेम है। अब आप सोच रहे होंगे इकोलॉजिकल रोल प्लेइंग गेम क्या होता है भाई? आप इमेजिन करिए कि ये गेम हो रहा है एक पैरेलल दुनिया में, 8वीं या 10वीं सदी की दुनिया को मान लीजिए। एक ऐसे वर्ल्ड वाइड एनवायरमेंटल डिजास्टर की वजह से 100 साल तक अलग अलग जगहें या देश एक दूसरे से मिल नहीं पाए हैं। अब इस गेम में एक किरदार निभाना पड़ता है आपको, एक एक्सप्लोरर टाइप के कैरेक्टर का, जहाँ पे आप एडवेंचर्स पे जाते हो और दुनिया को वापस जोड़ना चाहते हो। अब मैं चुप हो जाता हूँ, जॉर्ज खुद से एक्सप्लेन कर देंगे। आप इंटरव्यू एंजॉय करिए एंड स्टे ट्यून्ड फॉर मोर। First of all, George, thank you so much for doing this. Mappa Mundi has been on my radar for a while, ever since Tejas told me about this. Let's just get right into this. One of the things I wanted to know was, what was your thinking behind it? Like, hey, I want this kind of vibe, for this game. Because, again, in TTRPGs, it's mostly you explore, you battle, you gain XP, and then you move on to the next quest. I mean, that's the basic gist of it.
Yeah. So my vibe for Mappa Mundi is that it's a hopeful game. The world of Mappa Mundi is one that is incredibly similar to our own. It's like a parallel version of our own world, but a slightly different point in this process is just coming out of this huge ecological catastrophe that has basically divided the world. It's divided all the continents and all the regions within those continents from one another. And this has happened for 100 years in the world of Mappa Mundi. And finally, only just like as the players start the game, they are the first people to try and go out and reconnect the world. And that's something that's like inherently hopeful, right? The idea that you as a normal human being, right? We don't have elves or dwarves or great clans of barbarians and stuff like that. These are normal human people who have been trained to do a job, and their job is to go out and reconnect the world while not killing anything. They swear an oath to do no harm, and I think that's like the core of the game, and that's where the idea of hope comes in. That normal people who have nothing to offer beyond their own enthusiasm and ability, I don't think you can really exist without hope. And I say this as a committed anarchist who therefore has to be an optimist. If I think we've got any chance of changing the world, I think it comes from the bottom up, and you have to hope for that. Like, it's a long process, man. Like, it's changing, but you start changing the world by changing the things immediately around you, and then as they change, other things change and other things change. If I was to, like a hope core game, I think that's the way that I'd put it.
Oh, I really like that hope core. Based on the core rules that I've read so far, it's again, it's like you've said, it's narrative first, and it's
Yeah.
very collaborative in the way that you're building the world with the narrator and the players. And I don't assume that you require a ton of people to sit around a table to go through the world of Mappa Mundi.
So when I started designing the game, I designed it with four. We call them licenses, but if you've played D&D, you'll understand them kind of like character classes.
Yeah.
So we have an archivist. You can play as an archivist, a diviner, a fixer, or a guardian. And not many games are letting you play as essentially a librarian in terms of an archivist, right?
Yeah.
But as an ex-academic, the archivist sits quite close to my heart. One of the really beautiful ways that I have found to play the game, and I know other people are trying this out as well, is just two people, like a couple. So me and my partner, for the longest time, we haven't had a regular in-person group. So me and my partner have played Mappa Mundi as a couple, with me acting as the narrator and her acting as a chronicler, because I am a sucker for the lone hero who's like, in the face of all odds, will go out and say, no, I will go and do this, even if no one will come with me. One of my criticisms of a lot of like traditional TTRPGs is that the GM or the DM or whoever is running the game is essentially, or can essentially be boiled down to, like a number generator. Don't get me wrong, there are excellent and incredible GMs and DMs out there who are weaving beautiful, complex stories, but like a lot of the rule systems they're using just require numbers to be generated and decisions to be made. Mappa Mundi is not like that. The narrator is a key, integral part of the storytelling process, even if a lot of the kind of narrative control is given over to the players. The narrator is there. That's why we call them a narrator. They're there to kind of facilitate and weave that story, but they are almost hearing it from the players and then weaving it into a framework.
Yeah.
I'm even working on a solo rules mode at the moment. Like this, literally, I've just finished doing that and then come on to chat with you. But yeah, so the solo rules are going to put the solo player in the position of a narrator, guiding Automa chroniclers through the wilds, which I think show that the fact that that is the solution to the solo mode shows you how much like drive the narrator has. Because normally in solo rules, you're seeking to replace the GM.
The GM, yeah.
Because they're just generating numbers and making decisions. But actually, in this case, we're replacing the players, and the narrator is taking on that role of guiding the players, guiding these kind of Automa players through the wilds, which I really, really like.
And it's quite different. Like I said, in most of those solo RPGs, you're replacing the GM. You are playing as the character, and again, I've seen some solo rules for especially fantasy games where you are just essentially making a random generator of you roll this, this, then this happens, then this happens. But
exactly,
really, it's very interesting where you can you have like a bunch of NPCs essentially.
They're NPCs, but you get to bring them to life, right? Like you get to bring them to life, and you roll dice to see if they figure something out or they find something. But you are the one building the world for them to figure out. Much like we wanted to keep it as close to the main game experience as possible.
One of the things that really stood out to me, and I've been getting into board games very recently. I'm more of a TTRPG guy, and I've been like branching myself into, hey, you know what, maybe I'll try some cooperative games. This gives me a very similar vibe where you're cooperating with players to come to a solution rather than having an sort of an antagonist kind of a situation. It brings out a very childhood fantasy out that this is an unexplored area. We're gonna put on our caps, we're gonna take, and we're just gonna go explore.
I've not really thought about it that way, in the kind of childlike way, but like actually I think that's something that kind of unites childhood probably across the world, right? In Mappa Mundi, the places that you're going to aren't necessarily unexplored, right? So the game has a very particular anti-colonial kind of lean towards it, which is it's not white Western Europeans going to places where people have lived for thousands of years and saying, look at what I've just discovered. Like it's really rejecting that fact. So Mappa Mundi has 10 regions, and each of those 10 regions you can start in. You can start being from any of those regions and starting from any of those regions and going out anywhere you want. But that idea of when you're a child, the world is unexplored. The world is undiscovered because you haven't discovered it yet, but you haven't discovered the things that world shows you. But I like what you said as well. So this cooperative focus and the idea of not having an antagonist but seeking an outcome I think this is a really, really important part of what Mappa Mundi is doing. When we were at the UK Games Expo earlier on this year, a lot of people were coming up to us and they're like, what the hell is an exploration and ecology RPG? And I was like, well, you wait until you find out there's no combat in it. And like almost everyone was really, really like obsessed with what Mappa Mundi was trying to do, which was great. But people were like, not a lot of people, but some of the people who would hear that there was no combat and they'd be like, well, where's the jeopardy? And like, it was interesting that they always, every single one of them used the term jeopardy. There is no rules for combat in the game. There's no rules for combat. There are no weapons. It's not possible to do within the boundaries of the game. Just because you are not a source of danger does not mean the world is not dangerous. Some of our monsters are 60 feet tall with huge claws and poisonous breath, right? They are dangerous creatures who don't want you to be around, but your job is to study them and discover them and to travel through dangerous wilderness to get to them. The fact there is no obvious antagonist, and while there are evil, horrible people, they're not like a world lord, like an overlord dragon who's about to summon a god to destroy the world, right? The worst resolution to a dramatic situation is to kill something and therefore immediately end the scenario. If you kill someone, you can't learn from them, you can't understand them, you can't work to better get around them, you can't find out what they're planning. If you kill them, the drama's over. What they're talking about is the adrenaline of combat, but there's no drama there. Drama, in my mind, comes from having to work your way around something that seems insurmountable. Like, if you're confronted by something that seems so ridiculously difficult that you have to work together, you have to work around to try and find other alternative routes. It's like in a horror film. As soon as you see the monster, the drama goes down, right? The tension ends. Like, I'm not anti-combat games. There's loads of them on I've got loads of my favorite games are full of combat, but they're also full of drama and storytelling.
You know what it reminds me of? It reminds me of the first time I saw Jurassic Park.
Yeah, it's not dissimilar to Jurassic Park.
I mean, the first time all of those guys pull up to a Jeep and see.
The Diplodocus, the Brontosaurus. Yeah, that's it.
I think I think it's the Brontosaurus. I used to be obsessed with dinosaurs at one point. I think everybody was.
We all were. Yeah.
But there is drama in this point. There at that point where you are witnessing something for the first time. Jurassic Park, I think, is the closest way I think I would be able to go to people and describe this game. Like, hey, imagine you're in a Jurassic Park and like that. Just take that vibe with you. Don't take the T-Rex vibe with you. Essentially, you can.
You can. There's some dangerous monsters in there. There's some kind of T-Rex equivalents, but most of the game is going to be that that thrill of seeing something that maybe someone so the monsters, while the regions are all inhabited, there are large parts of them that aren't inhabited, and some of the regions are more closely in touch with the monsters in their region than others. So for example, Garugoma, which is our version of it, like broadly speaking, it's our version of India and Bangladesh. The culture in that region is far more like the culture is far more closely in touch with their monsters because they kind of live and walk amongst people. They're not excluded to the wilds like they are in a lot of other regions. One of the things I really wanted to capture with Mappa Mundi is that that childlike awe and amazement that you feel when you come up close to the natural world. Because it is amazing. Like, Mappa Mundi's a game about learning and chronicling and documenting and understanding as much as it is about exploring. The point of the exploring is to do all those other things. One of the inspirations that I put down was the Monster Hunter series of games, but I specifically put in brackets after it, but turned upside down.
Once you label them as monsters...
Yeah, so it was an intentional choice for us to continue to use the word monster. We used the word monster intentionally because we wanted to show that, like, it's an exclusionary concept. It excludes the idea that something that appears monstrous can't actually have a rich inner life. A monster raises its young still. A monster feeds and sleeps and dreams and thinks. I wanted to subvert the term monster as much as I could, which is why we kept it in place.
You had taken a big responsibility of creating a parallel, sort of a parallel Earth, with all of these different regions, with their different cultures. How did you approach that with the from a sensitivity point of view, from the culture point of view, considering that all of us kind of live in silos of our own cultures unless we explicitly try to explore. So how did you sort of kind of approach that and tackle that?
Very carefully is the way that I would start off. So like to like cards on the table, like positionality. So I am a white working class neurodivergent queer man, right? Cis man. Our artist Joel Kilpatrick is a white neurodivergent working class straight man, and Jeremy, our editor, is a person of color. He's Taiwanese American. He lives over here in the UK now, and he is, as far as I know, is straight and is a cis man. So we didn't have too much of a kind of cultural spread. But one of the things we did do is there is no Britain and Ireland in the core book. Is our version of Eurasia and North Africa, split across 10 regions. Now, we could have done a book that was the same length as our current book, which is 220 pages, just focusing on India, for example, or just focusing on China, or just focusing on Western Europe, or all these different places. But we knew we needed to do more than that. So but we also knew right from the start that it was going to be incredibly important that we were working with cultural consultants to ensure that what we were doing was both culturally sensitive and within a fantastical setting, kind of accurate as well, accurate to the time period and accurate to the kind of cultural realities. So we, right from the start, we set aside a budget that was untouchable by anything else. It couldn't be touched. It was only for cultural consultants. I'm really happy to say that we are now finished with the cultural consultation process. We've worked with 5 different cultural consultants. So we worked for Garu Goma. So that's our kind of version of India and the Indian subcontinent. Fuondi, which is Southeast Asia. Zomung, which is China, which Jeremy wrote and kind of acted as cultural consultant on as well, because he has lived experience. The Mutan Steppe, which is kind of Mongolia primarily, but also the Central Asian republics. Tia Hakim, which is the kind of Near East, stretching from kind of like from real world Turkey all the way down to the Arabian Peninsula. And then also Aishamet, which is Northern Africa. And we really, really worked hard to identify people that we thought, one, understood the game, but also had the lived experience to kind of do this work sensitively and really, really well. You would have no idea how hard it is to find a cultural consultant with Mongolian heritage or Mongolian expertise in the TTRPG space. But all credit to Jeremy, he found a woman called Amalia who is absolutely excellent. So Jeremy and I wrote all 10 regional guides. So the regional guides are 10 pages. Ideally, what we would have done is we would have had TTRPG writers from those regions writing those regional guides. They would have written them. We'd have kind of outlined what we were looking for. They'd have written them to their lived experience, and then we would have edited them to make them fit with the theme of the book. Unfortunately, because this is our first game and every penny of Mappa Mundi has come out of my own pocket, we just didn't have the money to do that. But so we knew how important it was to work with the cultural consultants to kind of, it doesn't replace that effort, but it helps to ameliorate that reality. And as far as we could ensure, not offensive or reductive. We've also ensured that all of the monsters that we've used, the monsters and creatures, are drawn from. We've not imposed monsters and creatures onto the cultures that we're trying to depict. In some cases, we've kind of blurred the edges and we've changed the kind of physicality of some of the monsters. Like I can give you one example from Garu Goma, for example. The image of a monster who was like mainly made out of plants and trees. And I had in my head that this monster was like the living representation of the forest that it was born from, and that it was also the kind of repository for cultural memories. And Meghalaya State is one of the places that I would like to visit the most. So if my geography is correct, this is northeastern India, very heavily forested. So I found 2 things. One, and I don't have my notes up in front of me, so I can't remember the exact group, the exact cultural group this was, but there's one cultural group who live in Meghalaya in the Karo Hills, who have religious beliefs about a tree that used to connect heaven and earth that is now disconnected. And I was like, okay, there's a basis for this kind of monster that's made out of trees and is a repository for knowledge. And then I found, again, in a similar region, I found the legend of the Mande Barung, who's a kind of northeastern Indian equivalent of the Sasquatch, like the Bigfoot kind of thing. And I was like, okay, that kind of works. Like a monster that lives in the forest is kind of rarely seen. And so I fused those ideas, my own idea of a monster that was made out of trees with a real world cultural phenomenon in a place where trees are weaved into bridges and buildings, and a real monster, in inverted commas, from the region who is deeply associated with the forest. That's kind of an insight into the creative process there. A lot of the monsters we've just taken and kind of tried to depict them as close as possible to their actual cultural depictions. The Mande Barung, which is in the final book, and he's my favorite.
Yeah, the thing about India is like one region can be so different from the other. Like anybody would tell you, like there's immediate cultural differences in like the east, west, north, and south part of India.
It was the one that we had the most difficulty with, Jeremy and myself, when it came to the cultural consultation process, because our regional guides are quite limited, because the book has to be limited by size.
Yeah.
And our cultural consultant came back to us on this and was like, Garu Goma is too culturally homogenous. You are depicting a version of India that didn't exist and has only existed for a relatively short amount of time. And we really took that on board. And Jeremy, who had written the Garu Goma regional guide, went back to it. So what Jeremy went about doing with Garu Goma was stripping that idea of cultural homogeneity, which doesn't exist especially in modern India. And really, really worked with the cultural consultant to find a better solution that more accurately reflected this huge landmass that has got what's India's population now? It's 1 billion plus now, right?
1.3 or something.
Yeah. So and obviously we're not trying to depict modern India. We're trying to depict medieval India, but still, this was still always, as far to my historical knowledge, a heavily populated region.
Yeah.
And so that was exactly. Garu Goma was one where we got it wrong. It's incredible credit to Jeremy, who had written it, that as soon as this feedback came in, he and I spent some time digesting it and discussing our approach. We spoke with our cultural consultant, and then Jeremy went away and wrote a much, much better version.
Yeah.
But again, our regions are, narratively speaking, they're like a cup that's only a quarter full. We've given you the basics, and we want you to go in and fill the rest of it out for yourself. To use a phrase that my old nan uses, we're giving you just enough rope to hang yourself with, and the rest is up to you.
Oh my God, nan.
She's a bit of a keeper. She's a golden one.
People in like South Asia particularly are still getting into like the board gaming kind of scenario. And I think the most that people have gotten into are like I said, cooperative board games.
If you like telling stories with friends, and if you want to experience the enjoyment and excitement of confronting the unknown or the lesser known, then this is for you. And it's as simple as that. And in terms of talking directly to a South Asian audience, I would say that beyond Tejas, who introduced the pair of us, I don't know a single other person who's worked on a kind of South Asian TTRPG setting. And Tejas and Bludgeon, Tejas is obviously the right person to be doing this with Bludgeon. And we are like swimming in his slipstream to try and create, to try and with Garu Goma particularly, but our interest is to allow people the space to represent themselves. The game is not putting any barriers on you to doing that. In fact, it's actively encouraging you to do it. I know that I can't tell a South Asian audience what South Asia is like. Of course I can't do that, but I can create a space for them to explore it for themselves and for them to tell others. what their version of South Asia is like.
इस गेम का मुझे सबसे इंटरेस्टिंग पार्ट लगा कि ये एक पर्टिकुलर एंटी कलोनियल स्टांस लेता है, जो कि मीडिया में बहुत कैजुअली हम लोग ले लेते हैं, लेकिन हम लोग ये नहीं समझते हैं कि ये हमारे थिंकिंग को कैसे अफेक्ट कर सकता है। क्या आपको पता है कि कल्चरल और सेंसिटिविटी कंसल्टेंट्स कितने इंपॉर्टेंट होते हैं? आप जिस बारे में लिख रहे हो, जिस बारे में बात कर रहे हो, क्या पता आप उसको गलत तरीके से इनफैक्ट रिप्रेजेंट कर रहे हो अपने कोई भी मीडिया पीस में, चाहे वो गेम हो या नॉवल हो या मूवी हो। हम अक्सर सोचते हैं कि ओ, एक आर्ट की एक लिबर्टी होनी चाहिए इसको एक्सप्रेस करने के लिए, लेकिन अगर वो एक ऐसा माइंडसेट को बढ़ावा दे रहा है जो कि हार्मफुल है, तो मदद मांगने में कोई हर्जा नहीं है, जैसे कि 3CL स्टूडियोज़ ने किया। अक्सर लिबर्टीज़ लेने के चक्कर में हम खुद भूल जाते कि हमारे बाइसेस क्या हैं। तो जिनको आप रिप्रेजेंट करना चाह रहे हो, जिस बारे में बात करना चाह रहे हो, अगर आपको खुद उसका एक्सपीरियंस नहीं है तो प्लीज़ आस्क समवन।
In the UK, for example, we see certain places depicted in certain ways repeatedly. Consciously or unconsciously, you start to think that that's what these places are like, and you
येलो
have
फिल्टर।
to exactly. You have to do active work on yourself to penetrate that Orientalist view, and it's always going to be there. You're always going to have Orientalism in the white Western mind. It's always going to be there. But the idea is, how actively are you trying to dismantle that? How actively are you trying to penetrate it? How actively are you trying to give space to people you are otherwise Orientalizing to tell you that you are wrong, and to show you how you're wrong, and to share their own version? And like I said, unfortunately, we couldn't do that this time around. We just didn't have the money to hire writers on. But Mappa
Never
Mundi
say
is
never.
this is what I did. This is what I was going to say. So Mappa Mundi is our first game, and we by no means is our plan to release the game and then to just leave it alone forever. We have plans to expand all of the regions that we've currently got with kind of supplements and additional settings, with pre-written adventures that come into those regions, as well as expanding out onto the other continents as well. And as we do that, that process will be led by writers from those regions or with lived experiences of those regions. And I mean, so for example, one of the things that we're doing is I'm putting together a community license for Mappa Mundi that is incredibly permissive. It will allow writers and designers to use the Mappa Mundi setting to write their own adventures for Mappa Mundi and to sell them, and to use some of our artwork as well. It's a very, very permissive community license, because I want you to tell me your version of these regions, and I want you to get paid for it. And if I can't hire you to do it for me, I at least want you to be able to make money out of your own efforts without us touching a penny of it. You've done that. That's yours. You earn the money from that. I'm really happy that you're doing it.
That is amazing. Thank you so much for doing that.
It's the very least I can do, but I'm trying. It's the anarchist in me. You've got action is the thing. You have to take action.
But coming to actually how you go about and play the game, how do you explore the game? You have dice mechanics. You have landscape cards, and I think there are some card mechanics as well, which are there.
Yeah. So
Ooh, those are beautiful.
they are very, very, very beautiful, and they are all of the landscape cards are now done. In terms of how Mappa Mundi plays, it is incredibly, incredibly simple. So the narrator doesn't roll dice. They don't have any dice of their own. They don't need to roll dice. They don't need to keep track of dice rolls. You're not fighting anything. So there's no prep you need to do in terms of like, oh, I need to roll up stat blocks and I need to make sure I've got the right dice and all these different conditions. I've got to track none of that. You don't need to do any of that. So for narrators, it's an incredibly easy system to run. As long as you know what region you're in, what monster you want the party to encounter, and what the environment that they're going to be moving through is, that tells you what journey cards you need, and it tells you what monsters' behaviors you need to have up in front of you, and that's it. The rest of it can just be done on improvisational storytelling. You set the movement going, and you provide the kind of framework, but the players are the ones building it into life, and then you're just keeping track of it and responding and adding and contributing yourself. For players, you have 4 dice at any one time. And those are chosen from D4s, D6s, D8s, and D12s. You only ever, so you have 4 abilities. You have traversal, which is your ability to move through the world. You have deduction, which is your ability to kind of understand and ask questions about the world. You have observation, which is your ability to kind of see the world and learn about it. And then you have exploration, which is the drive to put those things into practice. So you only have dice. One of those dice is associated with one of those skills. So like in D&D, where you level up and you add points to your skills, in Mappa Mundi, you don't level up your character, you level up your dice. So a dice, a D4 becomes a D6, becomes a D8, becomes a D12, which shows that you are more capable of using that ability. The idea is you've gained expertise rather than experience. So it's still EXP. You have skills, but your skills are narrative. So one skill for the diviner is called Whispers. And we provide a very short little description, like an in-world description of what that skill might be. But it's up to the player to define what the skill means in context. So Whispers can simultaneously be, I can see people whispering over there and I can read their body language and understand that they're plotting something bad, or they're hiding something, they're hiding a secret. Or in the same session, Whispers can also mean, oh, I hear the whispers of fate on the wind. So the player,
that's good.
So this is what we mean by narrative first, rules light. None of the skills are mechanical skills; they're all narrative skills. So at all times, the players are determining the extent of their abilities. Now, the narrator can say, "No, that's ridiculous. Like that's not. There's no conceivable way in which that works." And sometimes it will be, "Okay, I can see how that skill is going to help you, but you need to make a dice roll as well, but the dice roll will be easier to achieve." Then the cards we have, they're all tarot-sized cards. They feature various landscapes, and they're also, I don't know if you noticed before, but if you have a look, they are drawn with rotational symmetry. So it's the same artwork, top and bottom, but colored differently and styled differently. These cards form what we call the journey deck. And the game has 3 phases: the research phase, the journey phase, and the encounter phase. So during the research phase, when the characters are learning about their target and the environment that the target lives in, the narrator is building a set of these cards based on the kind of environment that they're in. And when they discover information about the environment or the weather or something like that, the narrator will add a card into the stack. If they've missed the information, the narrator might add the card in but turn it inverted. So eventually there's a stack of these cards, and when the players then set out into the wilds to find their target, they play through these cards one at a time. So they are exploring a landscape, but one that their own actions have determined what it looks like. So every single session is always different. And then this is where what I think the real beauty of Mappa Mundi, where the real beauty of Mappa Mundi comes in, and that's in our mechanic that we call shaping. So one of our playtesters described it as adding flavor text to the world. Now, so you get where I'm going with this.
Yeah.
So as I've said, Mappa Mundi gives like a huge amount of narrative control over to players. So I'm holding up the beach. This beach card. So let's say we're in Garugoma, right? And I'm your narrator. And we're on the western coast, the kind of midwestern coast of Garugoma. And I know that there are kind of these plant creatures there called Heloi. And that's who you're going to find. You're looking to find these. But so when the beach card is revealed, I will say to your group, right, I'll give you a very, very basic overview of what a beach in this part of the region might look like. And then I will go round to you one at a time and ask you to add details to it. Now, you might add a couple of words, a sentence, a couple of sentences, a paragraph, even just a feeling or an emotion or a sense, like a smell, what you can hear. And then I pass it to the next person and I ask them to expand on it or to zoom in on it or to zoom out or to tell me how their character feels about what they've just seen and heard. And in this way, the players are defining the world they live in. It's their world, not the narrator's world. Because in a game like D&D, a DM is going to tell you what you see, what you see, what it looks like, what it smells like, what it sounds like, how far away it is, what it's doing, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
In Mappa Mundi, that process is entirely reversed. The narrator introduces what's there, and then the players bring it to life. And then the narrator is duty bound to carry that on. And the players can make things easier on themselves. Let's say there's a cliff that they need to climb that's blocking their way. The first player who looks at the cliff and starts shaping it can be like, oh, well, I can see handholds, really faint handholds that have been shaped into the rock over years of use. And suddenly the process of climbing it has become easier. You're going to have to make some rolls on the dice. But because the first one of the players was clever and was like, actually, I can see handholds here, the narrator has to then make the process easier for players to climb. So shaping is where Mappa Mundi really, really comes into its own. And that carries over into the final phase, which is the encounter phase. In the encounter phase, you come face to face with your target, which is almost always a monster. And your job is not to kill it, but to uncover and reveal its 8 unique behaviors. So you use skills, and you use interactions. These are kind of specially focused actions that you can take. You use those and your positioning around the monster and the environment around it. Like, think of it like a boss arena.
Yeah.
Your positioning is still important. You're not just standing there looking at it and it's standing there looking at you. It's doing something and you need to be doing something as well. But you use those to prompt the behaviors. But not all of the things you do will prompt a behavior. Some of them will make the monster angry or scared or defensive. So you need to be like managing this process. But again, when you reveal a behavior, the narrator tells you what behavior you've revealed, and then you tell the narrator and the group what it looks like. So in our pre-written adventure, in the pre-release guide, the adventure is called Root and Branch. We feature the Helix Carcole, which is a 50-foot tall snail with a forest on its back. And one of its behaviors is that it's cold-blooded. Now, again, in D&D, if you discovered something was cold-blooded, I, as the DM, would tell you what that felt like. In Mappa Mundi, I tell you that you've discovered it's cold-blooded and then ask you to describe what that manifests like. I realize I've made Mappa Mundi sound quite long there, but actually it's really, really simple. Research phase, you're interacting with NPCs, gathering information. Journey phase, you are exploring the wilderness that your actions have created in the cards. And then the encounter phase, you are using your skills and the things you've learned to reveal these monster behaviors. And there's minimal dice rolling, narrative use of skills, and shaping, giving you creative control as a player.
Can this game be played in just like a single session?
Absolutely. You can dive into Mappa Mundi at any point in the world you want. Choose a region, choose a monster, choose what environment it's in, off you go.
You know what? I can totally imagine, because I've been listening to a lot of kind of audio drama TTRPGs recently. It will work so well as like an audio drama TTRPG.
So you are not the first person to have that thought.
I imagine so.
We're in active discussions with an incredible group who want to do exactly that. In fact, they were the very first people to get in contact with us when we announced Mappa Mundi. Literally the day that we released the pre-release guide, the producer for that session got in contact, and the plans are in the work at the moment. So yeah, I agree with you. I think Mappa Mundi really lends itself to an audio drama with beautiful. The pitch that the producer and the group gave us was that the wilds are a character. They're not a background. They're a character in and of themselves, and you can really capture that with good sound design.
The system actually reminds me a lot of progression works in Kids on Bikes. So there's a lot of familiarity. And very interestingly, No D20s.
I don't know what it is. I really don't like D20s. I really don't like them. All the games that I design, I'm trying to use similar dice systems. Because I want all three, even if the three sales, all three sales studios games, even if they're all working on different engines and they're completely different games, I want them to have familiarity between the games. So shaping, for example, is a mechanic that I'm so proud of, works its way into all of my designs. The dice being used as a form of expertise rather than experience, that is in all of my games so far.
George, thank you so much for coming on to whatever this will turn out to be. I think you're the first person I'm interviewing for my new series.
Oh, well,
Which I'm
that's very nice. So, one, thank you for having me. It's been brilliant, and I've really enjoyed it. But two, thank you for me being the first person. I love that.
any I mean, I'm saying this very like any last words, but like any
Before I face the firing squad of public opinion, right?
yeah, I mean, anything that you want like a layman to know before we close this out.
I just give indie games a chance, guys. Like, even if it's not Mappa Mundi, I would love you to go out and give independent creators a chance. There's incredible work coming out of the Philippines at the moment. There's incredible creators and writers and designers who are all across the world. Give independent games a chance. You will be so rewarded for it.
I think the indie scene at the moment is a gold mine. It's booming, and I
Mm-hmm.
think it'll keep continue. It'll keep continuing to wait. It'll continue to boom.
Yeah.
Sorry, English not my first language. Is there a way to play it online with the card mechanics and like?
Yeah, at the moment you can play it on Tabletop Simulator with the cards. We have a
Okay.
Tabletop Simulator mod that you can play it with using the cards. If people want to start anywhere and they want to start with a game that gives them a no combat, if they want to try a game that doesn't focus on combat and focuses on joy and hope and exploration and protecting monsters rather than killing them, then obviously I have to say Mappa Mundi is a great place to start. We'll be on Kickstarter in February. We are hoping to be shipping worldwide if there's enough, especially if there's, shipping is expensive, especially, because we're fulfilling from the UK. We're fulfilling from the UK and the US. Shipping to places like India is expensive, but it's not impossible. And if not, PDFs are cheap to ship because they just turn up in your email. So, come and find us on Kickstarter. You can find out more about the game at mappamundyrpg.com. And yeah, come and find us, come and join our Discord and Facebook communities, sign up to our mailing list, and hopefully we'll see you on February when the Kickstarter starts.
Well, उम्मीद है कि आपको ये इंटरव्यू अच्छा लगा. अगर आप ऐसे और इंटरव्यूज़ देखना चाहते हैं और बोर्ड गेम और TTRPG कंटेंट देखना चाहते हैं हिंदी उर्दू में, तो आप प्लीज़ मुझे सब्सक्राइब करें. इंस्टाग्राम पे मुझे फॉलो कर सकते हैं, ब्लू स्काई पे मैं हूँ और ट्विटर पे भी हूँ. और अगर आप एक्सक्लूसिव बिहाइंड द सीन्स फुटेज चाहते हैं या आप जस्ट मुझे सपोर्ट करना चाहते हैं, तो मेरा बाय मी अ कॉफ़ी लिंक भी है डिस्क्रिप्शन में, जहाँ पर आप मुझे सपोर्ट कर सकते हैं. एक्सक्लूसिव मेरी तरफ से आपको आर्ट भी मिलेगा जो आप कहीं भी यूज़ कर सकते हैं कमर्शियली. अंटिल नेक्स्ट टाइम, डाइस रोल करते रहें.